The crisis on the southern border is growing. We're now getting word that Alaska will be deploying National Guard to Texas to help secure the border. At the same time, 14 governors gathered in Texas to assert their right to defend their states and their borders and stop an invasion of this country. At the same time, news is breaking about the alleged bipartisan border deal, which is in fact more funding for Ukraine, Israel, and less funding for the border. Don't get me wrong, the bill itself does have money technically for immigration issues, but the funding goes to NGOs. The bill guarantees the Biden administration the right to bring in 5,000 plus illegal immigrants per day. And when that threshold is met, it just moves them to ports of entry instead of illegal crossings. Make no mistake, this bill is not a border security bill. It is codifying the legal right of Joe Biden to strip the states of their power so they cannot defend themselves from waves of illegal immigration. It would fund illegal immigration. It would overwhelmingly, to the tune of $60 billion, fund war in Ukraine. And it is an ultimate betrayal by Republicans in the Senate. And so I see this news from Newsweek. I got to be honest, I'm trying to figure out what's the lead story. What's the first article? Every day when I'm looking at this big news, I say, what is the story that captures everything? And I have the story from Newsweek. Texas stripped of powers in border security bill. Now, it was tough call, because we also have this story. 14 GOP governors gather to support Texas's right to protect its borders. Well, one of those governors was Abbott, so of course he's going to assert that. But when you have these stories at the same time, the federal government is seeking to strip the state's powers to defend themselves. They want it codified. Meanwhile, 14 governors are asserting their right to do so. Wow. We are headed for a massive clash. I don't know. Part of me thinks it's all for show. You know, many people have said, Tim, what Abbott is doing may be good, but it's not stopping anything. And it's just for show to convince the American people, those who are angry, that someone's trying to do something. But when you look at what the federal government is doing, this border bill is shockingly psychotic. And I got to be honest, I am surprised how brazen it is, this attempt to steamroll the destruction of the American border, American sovereignty, and fund the war in Ukraine masquerading as U.S. border security. You see, I'll tell you why they do it. For the longest time, there have been many libertarians, conservatives, not every libertarian, mind you, but even post-liberals, who have complained, why are we funding war in Ukraine when we're not securing our own border? So they decided to put the funding for Ukraine war in a supposed border bill. That's right. More money, 3 times as much money will go to Ukraine as it will to southern border issues. And the reason I say that, and don't say security, is that they're dumping money into NGOs to help facilitate illegal immigration and shatter our border. The other night, I was having a good old time down over at MGM National Harbor. You know, I go there from time to time. It's a fun place, and I'm playing myself a fine game of poker with the boys. There were some individuals there who are familiar with the show and my work, some who had worked for the Libertarian Party, and it was an interesting conversation. But and this story matters. It's why they do this. At the table, conversation came up about politics and what's happening in this country. And of course, it had to happen. Someone said, have you figured out who you're voting for yet? Snap. Of course, Trump. Well, one guy at the table lost his mind. Started spitting, yelling, and muttering to himself about how stupid everyone is, about how Trump is evil and a liar. And he said, name one good thing Donald Trump did. I'll wait. And I said, Abraham Accords. And before I could even finish it, he goes, you can't name even one. These people, they're so stupid. You can't argue with stupid. And he said, Donald Trump has never told the truth about anything in his life. And that was so extreme. Another guy at the table goes, oh, come on. He's talked about sports at least. But here's my point. It was fascinating to see that interaction. But understand, as much as many may be rolling their eyes, be like, Tim, we don't care about your poker stories. No, listen. The point is there are people like this you encounter in the wild who hear the news from CNN, and we have CNN pulled up, key highlights of the Senate's proposed border deal package. And you get Joe Biden saying Give me the power and I will secure the border. And these people who are not smart enough to listen to words and just mutter to themselves in anger as they bang on the table about how Trump is bad, hear the news that Biden's trying to secure the border. These stupid Trump supporters won't listen. They won't listen. And I'm sitting there like, did you read the bill? Unfortunately for us, these people don't read the bill. There was a better conversation I had with another guy who was a lawyer. He was a cool guy. And he said Colorado did not unrestrict abortion. I said, yes, they did. I'm not sitting here to have some guy just mutter. I'm not playing that game. If you're a plumber and someone came to you and made some ridiculous claim about plumbing, you'd be like, no, stop. I'm not doing this. And then he just went, okay. But there are people who genuinely believe fake news because it comes from the corporate press and from Democrat personalities and leftists. The bill itself unquestionably gives Ukraine $60 billion, allows illegal immigration up to 5,000 per day or more. It just moves them to ports of entry and says they can now process more claims. It codifies the legal process. It basically legalizes anyone walking across the border. This is not an exaggeration. It is the antithesis of a border security bill. But you get these people who won't read the news. They'll only hear passively on the TV, Biden begs for border security powers, Republicans say no. And that's the game. When these Republican governors come out inevitably and say, this bill is a disaster. When you get Steve Scalise, I believe I've got Steve Scalise right here. He says, let me be clear. The Senate border bill will not receive a vote in the House. Here's what the people pushing this deal aren't telling you. It accepts 5,000 illegal immigrants a day and gives automatic work permits to asylum recipients, a magnet for more illegal immigration. Not only that, it removes, in some circumstances, the court process for quote unquote asylum seekers. That means when a criminal alien enters this country, they can rubber stamp a work permit. But of course, what will happen is these individuals, like I encountered the other day in the wild, will say, Biden got a border security deal and the Republicans blocked it. They're doing this because they just want to win. Well, it is what it is. Knowing is half the battle, right? I can leave you all with some great satisfaction, however, from the encounter. I had a good time as the guy muttered to himself, and I said, listen, you asked me for one thing about Trump. I said Abraham Accords, and now you're just muttering to yourself that I didn't say anything. And then he stopped. And he's like, what? And then at some point he goes, I bet you like Alex Jones. You're a conspiracy theorist. And I was like, I actually know Alex Jones. I consider him a friend. And he was like, ah! And then a couple guys at the table were like, that's going to piss him off. Look, dude, if your brain is so broken, you can't handle a simple conversation without experiencing Trump derangement syndrome. Well, that's on you. But the problem for us is that it is a problem we must face when we all know people like this. And it is weird. It's like, dude, calm down. It's like we're sitting here playing a game of cards on the weekend, having a good old time, and you're losing your mind. I didn't yell at the guy. I said, I'm voting for Trump. And he just brain shattered. The problem is these individuals will not read these bills, and that's the game plan. Biden will come out and keep saying, I'm trying to secure the border. Why won't you help me? In reality, it's funding for Ukraine. We've got a lot to go through. Take a look at this. We'll give you a quick glimpse of CNN because, of course, they're going to falsely frame things because they're evil people. Key highlights of the Senate's proposed border deal package. They say, now, to be fair, they do actually, as much as they try, they do actually you got to get some of the facts in there. New emergency authority to restrict border crossings if daily average migrant encounters reach 4,000 over a 1-week span. If that metric is reached, the Homeland Security Secretary could decide to largely bar migrants from seeking asylum. Oh, basically it comes down to Mayorkas, who has already allowed all of this. So that means nothing. If they increase above 5,000 a day on any given week, DHS is required to use that authority. Now, hold on. It says if encounters reach 8,500 a day, they're required to trigger the authority. What does that mean? But the federal government is limited in how long it can use the authority. You see, it's nonsense. They're saying nothing. So we've already had record-breaking days of 10,000 criminal aliens per day. And they're saying, well, if it gets close to the record, then maybe we have to trigger some kind of authority where we can determine upon our own discretion what to do. Here we go. In the first year, the government can use it for 270 days. This is not even, it's basically codifying all the illegal immigration. It's legalizing it. Codifies a policy that requires the government to process at least 1,400 asylum application at ports of entry when the emergency authority is triggered. You see, what they're basically saying is once they reach a certain threshold and they're nearing the record of 10,000 per day, they will shuffle the others to the border to do the same thing. And here's the important part. They're saying the border must do it. So they're guaranteeing up to 10,000 illegal aliens, illegal immigrants per day. Basically makes them not illegal. It makes it a legal process. Raises the legal standard of proof to pass the initial screening for asylum, making it potentially more difficult for asylum seekers to pass. I don't buy it for 2 seconds. But I will say, that's there. I read it. Fair point. But personally, I don't believe it. Because expedites the asylum processing timeline from years to 6 months. Introduces a new process in which U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services would decide an asylum claim without going through the court system. And it doesn't apply to children. This means they can say whatever the standard is they want. They can say the standard is more difficult. And then when you overwhelm U.S. Citizenship and Immigration, CIS, they're just going to be like, no, we agree. Rubber stamp. No, we agree. Rubber stamp. No more courts. Just shuffle them on in. Preserves the president's authority to designate humanitarian parole on a case-by-case basis. Includes limited changes that narrow the use of blah, 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 blah. Nonsense. You want to know why this article from CNN is nonsense? What it's not telling you? $20 billion immigration deal. The bill itself includes $60 billion for Ukraine. Why isn't this included in these articles? It talks about fentanyl. It talks about these other things. The bill itself has funding for Israel. It has fun. Do I have one of these tweets pulled up? No, we got a video of Texas securing the border, though. That's interesting. The bill itself would provide massive funding for foreign war. Senators unveil long-awaited border deal from Politico. Let's see if they got this one in here. $118 billion agreement. Now, hold on there a minute. You may be saying, nah, I'm confused. I thought it was a $20 billion border deal. Here we go. Senators in both parties have finalized a deal on stricter border and immigration policies headed towards an uncertain floor vote. Well, the Republicans in the House are saying no. Democrats are saying all we've got to do is flip a small handful of Republican members of the House and we win. And perhaps they will. Here we go. Thank you, Politico. No, seriously. You can't get it from CNN. The border foreign aid deal. And there it is. $17 billion in aid for Israel. Amazing. They go on to talk about what's going on with the rest of the border. Where's our $60 billion for Ukraine? Come on, let's get that number up there. You got to wonder why it is that you've got $118 billion. So do they not get into Ukraine? I love this. There we go. The $118 billion, legal crossings, blah, 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 and sends billions of dollars to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, as well as the border. That's the game. My friends, things are heating up. I don't know exactly how this will all play out. Part of me thinks it's all for show. That Texas ain't going to do nothing. The National Guard going down to the border is meaningless. And in the end, if this bill passes, it will strip the states of their powers, of some of them. Alaska, National Guard plans deployment to assist federal government on U.S.-Mexico border. The issue here, of course, is federal government. Oh, man. I don't know. I got to clarify what I was saying earlier, because I think as I glossed over this, I may have implied they were going down to assist Texas. That's the assumption because so many states have teamed up. But let's go. The Alaska Army National Guard said Friday it had begun preparing for a potential deployment early next year in support of the federal government's U.S.-Mexico border control efforts. In a prepared statement, the Alaska National Guard on Friday said that a memorandum from the federal government had been issued directing Alaska forces to prepare 2 Lu-872 Lakota helicopters, 20 guardsmen, to potentially be deployed in early 2025. They would provide support on the border. So I wonder what this, yowza. I feared this would happen. And all I can say is I called it. It's not much to call, though. This is wild. When we were talking about the National Guard on the border and the fears that the federal government would make attempts to nationalize the Texas National Guard, many people, many Democrats in government and personalities had called for this. Many people, wow, they had considered the implications of what it would mean if Joe Biden attempted to seize control of the Texas National Guard in this moment. Right now, as I showed briefly, that we have this video, Wall Street Silver posted, of Texas with its shipping containers covered in razor wire guarding the border at the Rio Grande. I asked this question: what if the federal government does not federalize, nationalize the Texas National Guard, but what if they nationalize Louisiana and deploy neighboring National Guard against Texas? Then what? What an interesting predicament. The federal government has the ability to call in the National Guard from a state under certain criteria. One of those criteria being they cannot enforce the law in any other means. So they have to use National Guard. Texas has a state guard and Florida has a state guard as well. They're separate from the National Guard and they cannot be federalized. Although, my friends, some have argued, I was having a conversation on the culture war with some from Texas. I said, of course they can federalize the state guard. And people said, one guy's like, no, that would be crazy. They can't do that. And I'm like, listen, the idea that a thin piece of paper describes a process by which should or should not happen is not the qualification or it's not going to bar action from being taken. If Joe Biden sent in the troops and declared he was, the real question is not can he do it? The real question is would they follow? What the state government does is meaningless. The command for the state guard of Texas or Florida could say sure. I doubt it, but they could. And then what? So here we go, ladies and gentlemen. What are we looking at here? Alaska's going to deploy National Guard to help the federal government against Texas. I don't even know what that means. It's 20 guys, okay? A couple helicopters. Could this be the escalation which leads to civil war? Joe Biden has called upon a state to stand against Texas. Did anybody catch this story from the other day? I mean, it's Monday, so I do this. I do the news when I can do the news. We don't have the date on here. Let's see. It's from the 3rd, I believe. This story is from 14 hours ago. Sorry, updated 14 hours ago. It's from 1 day ago. So I believe this story was published late on the 3rd. It's over the weekend, and here we are on Monday with news. Joe Biden has begun the process of calling state against state. I wonder what's going to happen. You know, in that movie, Civil War, that's coming out, they have a trailer. The trailer shows a map of the states and where they're aligned. And I don't recall. Let me actually pull up the A24 map. It's A24 Films. And we'll pull up this map and take a look at it. Because it does show rather well. Alaska is a loyalist state. So you take a look at this. I'll try to zoom in here. Actually, that's not working. Are you kidding me? That's the best we can do. The Republic of California, the Second Republic of Texas, the Florida Alliance, Western Forces, and the Loyalist States. Yowza. There's 5 factions. It's not going to be 2. It's an interesting concept because I understand and I don't disagree with it. But I was wondering, when we looked at this, we tried to break down the contiguous United States. We didn't actually contemplate what Alaska or Hawaii would do. And I think it's fair to say they would remain loyalist due to their requirement for outside support. Alaska's going to need food. They got a lot of reindeer you can eat, but they need food shipped in. I suppose this creates an issue, however. Much of the resources being sent to Alaska are coming from the Pacific Northwest. So I don't know how the Western forces could take Oregon and Washington, and then flights would be coming into Alaska. They'd have to be flying in from, I guess, Wisconsin or Nevada. At any rate, a lot of people were like, how are California and Texas united? They're not. That makes no sense. They're not. They're 2 separate countries, but they have an alliance with each other, kind of like NATO's an alliance. What I can tell you right now is they are trying in every single way possible to destroy this country. The bill in question would create policies and funding that would go well into Trump's next term. So even if he gets elected, he will be barred from changing these things, from taking actions against them. What could he do? They will flood this country with non-citizens, and this bill provides them the legal ability to work. Elon Musk tweeted so they could vote. The big news, of course, I guess, is, and I just, it's tough because I don't want to lead with this stuff. I'm like, I don't know. The border bill's the big news and what we should be focused on. And I don't want to act like 20 National Guard being deployed to Texas to stand against Texas is the, I don't know, maybe it's nothing. My concern here is one step at a time, one grain of sand. The federal government has called on the Alaskan National Guard to join them, which means they'll be standing against Texas. And with this bill, the moves seem very clear, don't they? The federal government will strike the state's rights to defend itself. They will codify some issue where they say, you cannot stop what we are doing. And they will call in National Guard from other states to stop Texas. I wonder what would happen. What do you think happens when Alaskan National Guard stands on the border with rifle and just 20 of them? And they say, you guys, we've got orders. GTFO. This is armed soldiers. Now, I don't know exactly what capacity, if they'll be armed or whatever the issue may be. They may be starting, just 20 guardsmen, potentially be deployed to provide aviation support to Customs and Border Protection. But this is how it starts. What happens then when you have National Guard standing against National Guard? Fuck. Try not to swear, man, but holy is wild. People were telling me for a long time, they were asking me, do you really think that soldiers are going to start marching against each other? Holy crap, dudes. What do you call it? What do you call it when Alaska National Guard stand against Texas National Guard? You call it whatever you want. I ain't interested in giving it a name. I don't know what word there is for it. It's going to get crazy out there this year. Hopefully, life isn't like a movie, but I don't know. We'll follow up more on this bill as the situation develops. Next segment is coming up at 1 p.m. on this channel. Thanks for hanging out, and I'll see you all then.